Hello, everybody, to another edition of the MC65 Podcast. Today, we are diving deep into enterprise security with Victor Hedberg. I hope I pronounced it right. Focusing on Active Directory tiering and security privilege access in modern hybrid environments. With over a decade in cybersecurity from the Swedish public sector to the frontline DFIR and proactive security work at Trusec AB, Victor brings real world insights into how organizations can better defend their identities, admins, and critical infrastructure. Victor, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey into cybersecurity?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. So, Hedberg, Hedberg in Swedish, but close enough. Uh, yeah. So, who am I? Well, I've been working at this company called Trusec for the past 5 years now, where we're doing everything revolving around cybersecurity. Penetration testing, incident response, proactive security, uh, security vetting, pretty much anything that revolves around security, be it either cyber, personal, or protective, or whatever. So there's a lot going on. My journey into this actually started with my first job in IT. So I took the long route. I don't have a fancy degree or any fancy uh, titles from any college or anything like that. It's more along. I started in the help desk, working with Active Directory all the way from help desk to second line to sysadmin until I turned to the consultancy world, and that's where I am today. So it's always been a part of me, and uh, the how to get into cybersecurity from my perspective is well doing that. Starting how to learn how to fix things first, and then you really know how to protect them, and you can also learn how to attack them and circumvent those protections that are in place.
Interesting. And why you are joining the blue teaming?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a bit of both. I do a couple of things from the offensive side now and again as well. But it, I don't know. The thing for me with working with incident response is
Mm.
you really need to leverage all the tools in your toolbox to understand how to recover from an incident, how to rebuild, how to make it not as an attractive target again, to eliminate all of those weaknesses, those vulnerabilities in an environment. So that's where a lot of that experience comes into play. How to secure your Active Directory, how to eliminate those privilege escalation paths that are commonly seen in many organizations. So yeah, that's what lured me into the blue side of things. But again, with working a lot with the blue side, you also learn a lot about, okay, how can you circumvent the things that you just put in place? So it's a bit of both, I would say. Not that I'm acting as a penetration tester, but I do know how to circumvent some of the stuff that I keep telling my customers to implement.
From your perspective, where are the biggest identity related threats organizations will face today?
So when dealing with Active Directory, the most common one is because the way Windows works, right, is that whenever you log into a device, either via a remote desktop protocol or locally, you always expose your credentials to that device. So there's three main uh, issues with it. So
Mhm.
one being the cached credentials, which is stored locally on the device. Doesn't matter how often you reboot it. That is by default stored for up to 10 different sets of credentials on every device.
Oh,
Meaning that if I have logged into a device with local admin privileges or domain admin privileges, those password hashes are stored locally in the registry on that device for eternity, or until at least I reset my password. So that's one of the things. The other two ones are stored in memory of those active Windows sessions. So whenever you connect to the device, there's always a breadcrumb of your account stored in memory of that device. And if someone were to become a local administrator of that device, they could then dump the memory and extract the password hashes and or Kerberos tickets to move laterally inside of the organization. And that's the most common topic
Mm,
or the common misconfiguration, if you will, in many organizations is that that is still allowed to happen, meaning that a domain admin can log into any workstation, any desktop, any laptop, any server. So it only takes the threat actor. It needs to compromise one device in most cases to achieve that privilege escalation
mm.
in total.
That makes it really attractive for attackers to.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. And I mean, I have so many war stories, and we can't really delve really deep into them. But this is the core problem, right? That this is still allowed to happen because in Active Directory there are several groups that allow for a privilege escalation into becoming a domain admin. Like you
mm,
have all these operator groups, account operators, server operators, print operators, backup operators, and all of these groups are to some extent
mm,
used by many organizations because they don't really know what the intended use for those groups are.
mm,
So it's not uncommon that we see that hey, they've added the domain users into the print operators group because I don't know, someone needed to install some printer drivers somewhere. But what they don't know is that that group allows you local access to a domain controller and you can fiddle with the print print drivers on the domain controller as well. So there's a lot of uh, like Active Directory is more treated like a this is an essential service that gives us the what do you want to call it the possibility to log into our devices. It gives us the possibility to leverage groups for managing access. But if you don't really know what those permissions actually entail, uh, things can spiral out of control rather quickly.
mm. When we move to cloud, is it a higher risk for companies or is it less than on-prem?
Well, it depends on how you want to look at it, because from a default standpoint, if you will, then I would argue you could argue that the cloud is more secured because of the things that Microsoft are enforcing nowadays, which is mandatory multi-factor authentication for accessing the portal, for accessing programmatic access with Microsoft Graph PowerShell, etc. However, these things in terms of if you don't really know what you're doing, those kind of ring true in the cloud as well, because we've seen so many cases where users are being synchronized from an on-premises solution into the cloud, allowing for a lateral movement from on-premises into the cloud instead, or vice versa. Like you're syncing a user which holds privileges on-prem into a privileged role in Entra. Since it's in Entra, I can then compromise that user. I now know the username and password. If I were to, by happenstance, know your VPN uh, endpoint name, I can then try to work my way into your on-prem network as well with that user and compromise on-prem. So there's a misconception that, just because it's in the cloud, it's by default secure because Microsoft are only providing you with a platform. It's up to you as a consumer to actually make sense of it and actually secure it.
Yeah, let's dive into AD tiering. For listener unfamiliar with this concept, what exactly is it?
Yeah, so the concept of administrative tiering is, in a nutshell, we box things into different administrative zones to prevent those nasty escalations or lateral movements from within Active Directory itself. So what I'm trying to say here is that we create an administrative zone. We call it Tier Zero, which consists of anything that is required for managing the domain. So your domain controllers, your Entra ID Connect servers, your PKI servers, etc. Those are all treated as domain controllers pretty much because of the dependencies that they have inside of Active Directory. Your Entra ID Connect server, for instance, that service account, it can uh, be manipulated to reset passwords, or you can grab all the passwords for the entire domain, regardless of if the accounts are synchronized or not. So there's a lot of these things to take into consideration. But provided that we put all of this into one administrative zone and we only allow access if you are on an equivalent level of permissions, meaning that you need to be a domain admin, we can then box that into one particular zone and say that, okay, you need to be a domain admin to administer these servers, right? So moving the step below that is to call it like the tier one, which is mainly your workload servers, like your Exchange server or your SharePoint or file servers, print servers, what have you. But in the same time that we're creating that zone, we're also disallowing the possibility for a higher privileged user to log into those systems to try to negate that possibility of exposing those secrets on those systems. So the concept of administrative tiering really is it boils down to two things. One being the main purpose is to limit the spread of sensitive credentials in an environment. The other one being that, okay, we have a strict delegation practice in place to ensure that, you know, illegitimate or what do you want to call it, administrative activities are not allowed to happen. So by having those chains of thought in place and the control measures in place, like in group policy objects, to make sure that if you're a domain admin, you're not allowed to log into the SharePoint server via remote desktop protocol. We can then elevate the security posture of Active Directory, making it harder for an attacker to compromise the entire directory. So that's a key point as well. This is not a silver bullet kind of thing. This is more of a concept or a way of working that makes it harder. We like to call them speed bumps. And this is, you know, when you're driving down the street and you're seeing a speed bump, you kind of need to slow down because otherwise you're going to wreck your car. So that's the same kind of idea that we're uh, trying to implement inside of any Active Directory.
And ID tiering is a must, or is there other, I don't
Well,
know.
uh,
uh,
if you're using Active Directory, even Microsoft says that you should use a tiered administrative model. However, Microsoft have removed all of those documents describing how to do it. Uh, I fully agree with that. Like if you have an Active Directory domain or an Active Directory forest, you this is an absolute must. There's no shortcomings about it. You need to have this in place because it, as I said, if it takes one device compromise to compromise the entire domain, that's a bad day at the office. So you actually need to have this in place.
they had, it's interesting. Microsoft had the the kept this documentation. So how has Microsoft's approach to tiering changed over the last years?
So the newer documentation is more along the lines of what do they call it, like securing privileged access, and it's uh, heavily built around leveraging the cloud to protect on-prem. Um, uh, I don't think that's the necessarily the most proper route for most organizations. I'm kind of boring in that sense that I like to use, legacy systems to protect legacy systems, which is on-prem can protect on-prem, and we use the cloud for the cloud. Um, because if we start using all of these cool cloud security measures to protect on-prem resources, we are in effect increasing the risk or increasing the dependency on a secondary service, which might lead to a service outage in the cloud, resulting in we can no longer access on-prem to perform administrative tasks. So
Mm.
that's one of the main issues I have with it, with the current way that they are promoting the privileged access. Otherwise, looking at it from you know uh, a logical standpoint, it all makes sense. Like you need to have just in time, just enough administration permissions. Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Uh, doesn't really work in an on-premise environment because of certain things that you need to be aware of in how Active Directory works. It's hard to get that Git kind of thing to work in on-prem. Um, so there's, I mean, you can take things from the current documentation that Microsoft provides, but again, they're saying it outright that you should use an administrative tiering concept in your Active Directory when dealing with these, securing privileged access. It says so in the byline that you should have a tiered approach.
Mm. And there's this classic tier 0, tier 1, tier 2 model. Is it still relevant? And what assets and systems should be in tier 2, tier 1, tier 0, tier 2?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there are a couple that are, off the bat, straight up tier zeros. So I mentioned them like your domain controllers. Yeah, well, they manage your entire domain. We talked a little bit about Entra Connect or the Entra Cloud Provisioning Sync Agent because of the dependencies that those service accounts have. The MSOL account that gets created by the Entra Connect wizard, it gets the directory replication. What is it? Synchronized directory replication, all uh, ACLs on the root of the domain. That means that it can get all of your password hashes in an instant. You have your PKI servers. If I can get a certificate template that allows me to grab a certificate for the name of administrator at which domain, whatever, that also allows me to become a domain admin without having to be, a member of the domain admin group. So there's a lot of these different systems that are they aren't domain controllers, but they are equally protection worthy as if they were a domain controller. So PKI servers is one, Entra Connect, cloud provisioning sync agents. I know a lot of customers are using the Intune connector for managing their certificates for 802.1x Wi-Fi capabilities. That certificate template is vulnerable to that kind of ESC type of attack, that it can supply the name and the request. You can become whoever in that organization. So that system where that connector is installed is also to be treated as a tier zero. So you really need to be aware of all of these different privilege escalation paths in order to be able to determine what constitutes tier zero in your environment. I've given you a couple of examples, but it can vary. Another example could be, if you're using System Center Configuration Manager, that agent has the powers to execute code locally on the system that it's installed on in a system context. Meaning that if I'm an admin of the CM, I can then tell my domain controller to, hey, execute this PowerShell script. So there's a lot of these different what is tier zero and what isn't. But again, as a default, I would say like the domain controllers, your PKI servers, your hybrid servers for syncing users to the cloud. Those are the traditional ones. And moving then into tier one, what constitutes tier one in an organization? Well, basically anything that isn't tier zero in terms of servers. That's the easiest way to get that definition, right? Uh, but that also means that you really need to be aware of, okay, which services are running on this system, permissions do those service accounts have, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, but generally speaking, that's the way to look at it. Like if it isn't tier zero, then it's a tier one system. Um, and in the model that we usually work with, we have scrapped the name tier two for managing endpoints, and we just call it tier endpoints because our model has the possibility to extend. You can create a secondary server tier. So you can have a tier zero, a tier one, and a tier two, which is basically the same as tier one. It's just that you want to enforce different logon restrictions for managing that particular system that is located in tier two. So you need to have multiple different accounts. Uh,
And you have seen, I think, in your career a lot of organizations and especially, yeah, in Active Directory. What are some dangerous misconceptions organization have around privilege access separation?
well, the ones that we've already covered is one big one. Like uh, if you're not entirely sure what the built-in groups are capable of doing, uh, please don't use them. Like, don't use these server operators, backup operators, account operators group. again, then not disallowing the use of domain admin logons on a regular workstation. That is a really, really common one. Uh, there are other ones as well, like we've seen a couple of customers trying to get creative inside of Active Directory to try to work with a more delegated, permissive permission approach. Um,
Mhm.
but again, if you need to really be on top of what you're doing, because if you use the delegation wizard and you say, hey, this group has full control of this OU and all of its child objects, you know which accounts are located in that OU. Like if the service account for the Entra ID Connect is located in one of those OUs, you may have just given the service desk domain admin by proxy, just by delegating those permissions. So it really is. I got this feedback from a customer last week that, oh, I didn't know you could make a career out of working with Active Directory. I thought this was a dead product. And I'm like, yeah, well, that no, it's not a dead product, and you really need to be on par with how these permissions interact with each other, because there's a lot of holes in the ground that you can mistakenly put your foot in if you don't really know what you're doing. So that's another like tip for the people listening, that uh, really make sure that you're in full control, or you at least the to the extent of your competency when it comes to Active Directory. Like really be sure of what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, to make that distinction, because you don't want to be guessing inside of Active Directory, because as I said, one simple checkbox can make it, oh, everyone's a domain admin. That kind of scenario can occur.
Mm. And let us change draw to the red team. How can we attack, or how do attackers typically exploit poor tiering implementations?
Well, we've seen a major shift the past couple of years. When I started working with DFIR, there was a lot of hype around using hacking tools, like Cobalt Strike for establishing a command and control chain. We saw a lot of like Metasploit and all of these like Mimikatz, all of these tools that were used to try to brute force their way into an organization. Since security monitoring tools have been uh, made better to detect these, we're not seeing them like at all anymore. So what is happening now is more of a transition towards that. Okay, the threat actors are leveraging Windows capabilities to attack Windows,
Mm.
to try to hide inside of the noise that the computer already makes. I did a demo of this at a conference in Paris in late April, where
Mhm.
I used SSH, which is installed by natively on Windows 11, to
Mhm.
establish a C2 channel to an open source platform, which is called Surveo, exposing RDP to the internet. The EDR did not detect this. It did not respond to this. There was no alert fired on it. The threat actor, then me, connected via RDP into that workstation and leveraged Windows to attack that domain. So there's a lot of things like inside of an Active Directory domain, any domain user can read anything in the domain. So you just need to have like the AD Explorer from sysinternals installed on that workstation, and you're good to go. You can read anything. And so to answer that question, like how can the red team work with this, is as I said, if you know how Windows works and you know how Active Directory works, you know how to attack it, because you know how to stay quiet. Uh, the demo, I did not have time to show that, but I had it in the pipeline to actually enable a WDAC policy on that device that I compromised, to fully disable Defender uh, and Defender EDR, while the portal still said, "Hey, this is fully healthy and fully operational," because I did not touch the network agent on that device. So I just killed the EDR agent, killed the Windows Defender agent, and I was able to execute whatever I wanted on it. And that's because I know how Windows works. Like how to I know how to protect it. I know what works. I know what doesn't work, and therefore I also know what can I leverage to actually attack it.
when I got attacked, or how can I figure out if I got hacked, and what should I do as organization when I get a
Oh
threat?
yeah. So hopefully you'll see it before you see the ransom note. Uh, just kidding. But it is essential in this day and age to actually have EDR on every system everywhere. Coupled with, in the Microsoft stack, if you're running that, like you need to have Defender for Identity because you want to be able to correlate those identity related events with device related events. Um, and you need to work with these custom indicators that are aligned towards your organization or the current threat profile that is for your organization. Because as I just described, like I could use Windows to attack Windows, but that was with a native default Defender for Endpoint tenant. However, if I were to create custom indicators for the things that I know can circumvent these protection mechanisms, I can then start firing alerts whenever this happens in an illegitimate fashion. So you really need to feed that information into your EDR platform, regardless if you're using Microsoft, if you're using CrowdStrike or Sentinel One or whatever you're using. You need to feed your indicators into it in order to make it able to detect these types of things.
Mm.
Uh, and if you were to come to that conclusion that, hey, this is probably an attack, something is happening in our network, whatever we're doing is not enough. Main thing here is don't turn off anything. It's better to unplug things like the network cable, isolate it network wise, but don't turn the systems off. Because when it comes to a forensic investigation, that we really need to figure out, okay, what happened and how did the threat actor gain access? What did they do? All of these logs that are stored on the systems are essential for that type of investigation. I can't tell you how many times we've been in incident response engagements and the customer has said, well, we turned off the firewall. Okay, now we don't have any firewall logs anymore because you're not pushing it anywhere else. Everything is stored in memory of that firewall. Uh, so it's gone. So don't touch anything. Like unplug the network, as I said. Like cut the outbound internet connection because threat actors are reliant upon outbound internet connection for their C2 channel. Uh, and call someone who knows what they're doing. Like
Mm.
call an incident response company. I'm not saying hey call us, but you get the point, right? If you're
Yeah.
if you're suspecting that something has happened, we don't know what is happening and we don't know how to fix it. As I said, mitigate the possibilities of it escalating. Like unplug the network and call someone. Picturing it as coming home and you see that there's these marks on your door. What do? Well, you call the police, right?
Well,
You suspect there's someone in your house or there has been someone in your house. You don't go in and hey, I'm gonna make sure that no one is in here, right? I would the first gut feeling for me would be I'm picking up my phone and I'm calling, the local emergency number. So that's the same kind of mindset that you need to have when it comes to protecting your IT real estate as well. Like accept the fact that you're just a company. If you don't have a specialized team of people working with this day in day out, uh, don't get creative. Don't try to fix things yourselves. Just unplug the network cable and wait for help to arrive.
mm. And what's the role of technologies like privilege access workstations, jump servers, credential guards, LIPs? What are the rules?
So we talked a little bit about Active Directory tiering and conceptually how it works. Now, privileged access workstations are an addition on top of that. So again, to limit the exposure of your sensitive credentials, if you add on to it working from a privileged access workstation, leveraging Active Directory security features such as authentication policies and authentication policy silos, you can actually say that if you're a domain admin, you can only log in interactively on this particular device. So, in the greater sense, then to look at it, how can we limit credential exposure? Well, if you have those features in place, your credential exposure is one device. Because the way authentication policy silos work is that your if your account is in a silo, coupled with your privileged access workstation. That is the only device in the entire domain where your credentials will work when you're typing them in from the keyboard. And adding on to that, then with things like you mentioned, like remote guard or restricted admin mode, those are great additions to it as well to actually make these uh, RDPing or day-to-day administration of your environment even easier because it allows you as an admin to leverage single sign-on using Kerberos. And a by effect of that feature is that nothing gets stored on the target system in terms of password hashes. So there's nothing on those systems that you're connecting to that you're actually able to steal and reuse for a lateral movement. So
Mhm.
these are things that are incorporated in the tiering model that we work in. So we create all of these things to help people change the way you're working. And I know this is a big pain point for. I mean, I've done hundreds of tiering implementations during my time here at Trusec, and the most common pain point for any organization is that here comes an external consultant telling me that the way I've been managing my IT environment for the past 25 odd years is not secured and I need to change. And we're all humans and we all hate changes. So that's the biggest learning curve to get over. Like you need to start managing your environment in a different way. Working remotely is even better. Like you already have the server manager which was in its current state introduced in Windows Server 2012 R2. I mean, it all works with remote PowerShell in the backend. So you can add all of your servers into Server Manager. You can edit shares. You can restart services, what have you. You never need to use Remote Desktop Protocol. And that's the thing that we're trying to challenge with this, that hey, you need to change the way you're working, move it to a remote administration mindset instead, working with server manager, working with remote server administration tools, or with Windows Admin Center, which has been upgraded recently and is really really good at this. So you can actually perform all of these administrative tasks without having to RDP into different systems day in and day out.
When we look a little bit into LinkedIn, there is one thing in cybersecurity groups. There are a lot of posts, and it's about privilege access management. Why is this right now such a big topic, and why has it become central focused in cybersecurity?
Uh, well, I'm as I said, I'm one of the naysayers in this industry. Uh, I don't necessarily feel like a privileged access management solution is the correct way to go, especially when dealing with like tier zero levels of permissions because I'm always thinking like one, two steps ahead. If we have that privileged access management solution in place, you have a dependency on a service account, which is a domain admin, regardless how you want to look at it. It has either it's a direct member of domain admins or it has permissions on the admin as the holder object in your Active Directory. So there's a I feel like it's a way of challenging what I've already been talking about for the past half hour with administrative tiering and try to make it easy. Like this is the silver bullet. If you just buy this privileged access management solution, everything is fine and dandy and you don't need to worry about it. That is not necessarily true. Um, so usually when I talk to my customers about this topic, how can we incorporate this with a privileged access management solution? Well, it's an Active Directory solution. So of course, it's fully incorporable or integratable with a PAM solution. But again, then you have a dependency on one particular service. What happens if that service dies or goes down? How do you then access and administer your environment? So I usually recommend my customers to say, okay, you can use the PAM solution, but target it towards, tier one administration, because that's where you're going to have the bulk of your administrative users anyway. Don't let it touch your tier zero resources. The same goes for your IAM solution. Don't let your IAM solution automatically create new domain admin accounts. That needs to be done by a human because we need to stay in control in terms of are you familiar with the CIA triangle? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. Uh, Having those kind of systems in place, it actually messes with that CIA triangle because we already have the dependency on different solutions, different systems that can interact with the confidentiality and the integrity of the Active Directory environment.
Mm. And how important is just enough and just in time access today?
So as I said earlier, it's difficult to get that mindset into an Active Directory on-premise environment without having external integrations. I've seen a couple of professionals in the cybersecurity community talking about, hey, we can leverage privileged identity management with like group write-back to make you a domain admin on-prem. Again, what happens if the cloud is unreachable or something goes down? I mean, keep it simple. Like use on-prem for managing on-prem stuff. Um, so on that topic, it's kind of hard to get that just-in-time administration when it comes to the higher privileges in an on-premises solution. However, when it comes to just enough administration, are you familiar at all with the PowerShell way of thinking around just-in-time, just enough administration? Where you can
Yeah,
actually create like an XML file that says
mm,
which service you're allowed to restart,
mm.
etc.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I know which of them. I use script runner,
Hmm.
so a little bit, but I'm
Yeah.
not really that.
Yeah. So we're currently we're recommending customers to think in these lines, because instead of delegating full admin permissions on a Windows server, you can actually delegate like almost full admin privileges on that system. You can do pretty much anything inside of PowerShell except for these four different tasks, just as an example. So that's a real, if you reach that level, you're on a really mature level when it comes to, elevating your cybersecurity posture. But again, don't overcomplicate things. I'm not saying that you should start by looking into, okay, how can we enforce just in time and just enough administration in terms of PowerShell when we're still allowing domain admins to log in from anywhere. So we need to start somewhere. Start with the basics, get the basics right, and then you can always progress into a more mature state moving on.
Yeah, I have take a look in the new Azure service map with 1,100 services. It's amazing, and I feel there are 10% of the tools are related to the cybersecurity topic.
Mhm.
Uh, there are so much tools like Microsoft Defender XDR, Microsoft Entra ID PIN, and Microsoft PureView. How can we take, or how can an organization have an overview of all what they need in all these tools?
Oh, well, that's a really difficult question to answer because it's, how long is a string? But again, like as I said, you need to have an EDR in place in this day and age. So yes, you need to use Defender XDR if you're a Microsoft customer on all of your systems, including your domain controllers and your Enter ID connects. I mean, we cannot let them be unmonitored just because they are privileged or they are sensitive in that sense. But it all plays into, okay, which tool set do we use to protect which administrative interface? So as you mentioned, like PIM and all of these things, they're great for protecting, standing access permissions inside of the cloud. In my book, they're not so great at doing the same on-prem. And they shouldn't be used on-prem, if you're asking me. I think that let's take a step back, keep it simple. Like we have one set of administering on-prem, and we have another set of way to administer the cloud. And we can keep the same concepts or the same ideas fluent through each workload. But when it comes to the technical specifics or the technical features that we're leveraging, try to keep it like on-prem for on-prem, cloud for cloud in that sense.
How does it look? A company work with a cybersecurity company? Is it here? I got you the keys to my car, and you drive me secure to success, or how is it working?
So when we work in like these uh, what do you want to call it, proactive security engagements, it's more along the lines of what you and I are doing right now. There's some sort of video conferencing solution, and I'm the backseat driver. So I give you say I give you the keys, and I say no, you keep the keys, but I'll tell you where to go. So it's more of a a combined effort that uh, The customer is doing all of the heavy lifting because I want to try to, or we want to try to employ some sort of competency handover, like the sort of education standpoint that we want to make sure that you understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, whilst we are helping you to enhance the security in your environment. But when it comes to incident response engagements, well, then it's the opposite. Then we basically just say, okay, hand over the keys and don't touch anything. This is a crime scene. We'll do the investigation. We'll let you come back in once everything is fine and dandy. So it really depends on the situation
Mm.
in that sense.
Yeah. But it's I think a 24-hour job,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
cybersecurity.
yeah.
So, or I think the most companies don't shut down after working hours, their servers and so on. So, yeah, there you must have someone, I think, monitor 24 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about this. Like, you need to have an EDR. Well, it doesn't really matter if you have an EDR if the only coverage is from working like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which is regular Swedish working hours. Because what happens if the threat actor attacks you at 6 p.m. or 5:15 p.m.? Yeah, so it really is. If you have these eyes and ears, you need to have someone look at those logs 24/7, 365 days of the year. Uh, and that's exactly to your point. Like, cybersecurity is a 24-hour industry. Well, just this last winter, I worked on a case. I stayed up working until like 4 a.m. and then I got up at 6 a.m. to drive my kids to school.
Mm,
So it's a 24-hour schedule for people in my industry as well.
mm, awesome. Um, when or what advice would you give to security teams trying to measure up yeah, their identity and security posture? What tips can you give them?
Well, as I said numerous times now, so keep it simple. Get the basics done right first, prior to looking into, hey, how can we leverage this PAM or PIM or whatever you want to call it solution to enhance our security posture. Just take a look at, or if you don't know how to, then enlist someone to take a look at your environment and detail, hey, do these things like right now, get the basics done right. Yeah, and we need to shift back to, what are you going to call it? Like regular IT security hygiene. Like, shift back to make sure that the basics are in place, build on that, implement these things in terms of, well, if you don't want to go full out tiering, well, at least ensure that domain admins can't log in everywhere, or administrators in the domain, or the enterprise admins or schema admins, etc. Like, think big and start small. Do these small things to start the journey, because then you can always take bigger and bigger steps as soon as you feel more mature or feel more comfortable with that current set that you're working with.
I read special on cybersecurity groups that passwords are finally dying. Is that true? Or
Uh, well, it depends. Is the boring answer. uh, when it comes to like the cloud side of business, like, I haven't used a password for accessing my work laptop in the past 5 years. So I'm working with Windows Hello 100%. Um, so in that sense, for companies that are in that scenario, yeah, passwords are pretty much a thing of the past. However, as I said, working with on-premises Active Directory environments, no, passwords aren't dead. If you want to transition towards a passwordless authentication mechanism that works on-prem, well, certificates are your next best thing. So passwords, yeah, sure, we want to tell them that the passwords are dead, but they're not dead in that definition that they're not being used anymore. I mean, we're telling you that they are dead in terms of, don't use this as a primary method of authentication. Try to move towards or transition towards passwordless authentication, like Windows Hello or FIDO2 authentication mechanisms, like a hardware key, the pass key inside of Microsoft Authenticator app, those things, to try to eliminate that weak point in your security posture.
awesome. So in every session, I do a fast rapid fire round. So
Mhm.
I give I say, yeah, question, short answer. So
Mhm.
The most underrated Microsoft security feature.
Defender for identity.
Biggest AD security myth.
But sorry.
Myth. The biggest AD security myth out
Okay.
there.
Yeah. It's secured by default.
One thing every enterprise should fix tomorrow.
Block domain admins from logging into everything.
Who are the cooler guys, red team or blue team?
Uh, both.
Is there a favorite security book or resource you can say that have everyone to read?
Not a book, but a podcast, Darknet Diaries by Jack Resider.
Okay. And coffee, Red Bull, or tea during incidents?
Oh, energy drinks, 100%.
So yeah, thank you for your time. So it was really nice, this deep dive, and now we have learned also AD is not dead.
It won't be. Sorry, but it won't be.
It won't be. It will not die. Damn. Yeah. So, what is the one thing you say should everyone take from this session?
Well, as I said, like start with getting the basics right. Like we need to toggle back a couple of years to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't look at which tool to buy to help us prevent this. We should actually work with the basics first to get those in line, because we can add tools later that can help us maintain those basics later on down the line.
Yeah, then I say thank you, all listeners. You find all the information about Victor in the show notes and links, LinkedIn, and so on.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah,
I
thanks. Thanks
really
for having me.
bye.
Bye.